true crime fanatics. I hope you're doing well. Just a heads up, I'm probably going to ruin your day with this one. But I'm so glad that I called my channel Diamond Painting Fanatics, because it's just dawned on me that I use fanatics a lot, and it's an affectionate term for all of you that support me here on my channel and personally and everything else, and it fits everything because we are diamond painting fanatics at the end of the day, but we also have the true crime fanatics, and just fits, right? So I'm going to waste a few minutes just chatting as I do, because YouTube don't like certain words and they like to check the content of your video to make sure it's suitable for whatever, I don't know. But we're going to talk about some pretty grim things, and I just want to check in with you. I will say that I have fallen into a very deep, dark hole of true crime. The week before last week. Oh my gosh, it's been that long. We did the story of John List, who basically shot his whole immediate family because he didn't want to go on welfare. It's pretty much the story of that. Then we did the lesbian vampire killer. Now, I'm still doing the other episode, and again, I covered a case in there that John List was mentioned. He wasn't linked to the case or anything like that. It was just, it happened 10 months before this person was murdered, and it was brought up in the conversation. So I kind of went, who is that? And I thought, no, that needs a discussion. And the same with this dude. He is linked to the murder that happened, and they suspect that he might have done it. So when I looked into who Richard Cottingham is, again, warranted its own episode. I mean, this dude, I've only got the first couple of paragraphs in, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be a disgusting true crime. They all are. And I find this very difficult to talk about. I find this very difficult because when I first started doing true crime, I was like, oh, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And I thought that's inappropriate to the victims. Like, you know, but as true crime fanatics, some cases have a more fascination with them. Not to say that a husband killed his wife or wife killed her husband isn't worthy of a conversation. See, this is very tricky. It's not worthy of a conversation, because it is. But some individuals on this planet, some murder happens by accident or a moment of rage, and then they spend their whole life regretting what they did. And John List said, oh, I wish I hadn't done what I did. And I got the impression it was more because he was in jail than actually regretting what he did, because he had 18 years of freedom and he didn't regret it then, so this individual, again, I like to ask questions of you guys in the comment sections. I would like to know that some individuals, and I've got a feeling that this person is going to be one of them, they should not be in prison. They should be put in an electric chair or given an injection and just get rid of them. Some people warrant that. You know, the Fred Wests, the Ted Bundys, they just deserve... I mean, Fred West did us all a favour, although that wasn't fair to the victims, but, you know... and I remember having a conversation with my mum about capital punishment. We don't do it here in the UK. I think Ruth Ellis was the last woman to be hanged. But we don't do it in the UK. I know some states in America do. But they seem to be on death row for like 25, 30, 40, 50 years. They don't actually go through with putting them on death row. I think you should be on death row and then just line them up. Yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion. But I remember having a conversation with my mum, and she said, you can't put a person away for murder and then kill them, because that's murder. And I'm like, yeah, but they did heinous acts against innocent people. This person deserves something evil to happen to them. So it is a hot potato of a conversation. But I do think some of them don't deserve to still be breathing in air. Just saying, you know, it's just my opinion. I have a lot of them, but I have fallen very, very deeply into a true crime hole. I was doing a video when John List came up, and I released that instead of finishing this video that I'm doing. And now, then I found Tracy, the lesbian vampire killer. I found her case completely unrelated. I just stumbled upon it, and that needed talking about. And now we're here talking about Richard Cottingham. That is linked to Jeanette's case. That is on the other video that is not released yet. I know, I'm bigging this video up. It's just a compilation of the top 10 crimes that was on this list that I found. So it's various cases, some in depth, some not so much. But yeah, I think these people deserve their own episodes, and I'm not looking forward to this. I don't always read through them all first, and maybe I should, but I don't. Okay, so I'm recording this ahead of time. Usually I record my diamond painting time, and then I do a voiceover over the top of them, because I find when I diamond paint in real time, I don't really diamond paint, so you're not really looking at anything. So I'm going to say that I'm working on Feeling Foxy by Nazgul from the Fanatic store. Yeah, I'm going to say that because I think that's what I'll be doing. I haven't actually recorded that part of the video yet, so that's what I mean. I'm in a deep dark hole, and it's currently 6:33 in the morning, Monday morning, and when I'm recording this. So I'm just getting ahead of myself because, you know, I'm going to be moving house and all of that. Okay, right, you know what to do by now. Go grab your projects, grab a drink. I have a cup of tea here cooling down, but come diamond paint, and be prepared to be repulsed by this dude, because he's absolutely disgusting. So, as always, I like to start from the beginning and work through their lifetime to see where the trigger was, what happened to make them who they are. This is the fascination for me. So I always start from the beginning, basically. Okay, so this is Richard Cottingham. He was born on November 25th in 1946 in Mott Haven. It's a neighbourhood of the Bronx in New York City. He was the first of 4 children. Mummy must be so proud of her firstborn. Okay, so then in 1948, the family moved to Dumont in New Jersey, and in 1956 they moved to Rivervale in New Jersey. That's where, oh my gosh, that's where his fascination with bondage pornography came from. Began, I should say. According to him as himself, quote, "The whole idea of bondage had me aroused and fascinated me since I was very young," end quote. Cottingham had a close relationship with his mother growing up, but reportedly had difficulty making friends as a teenager. I think that's pretty normal thing, I would say, because you're going through the teenage years. In 1964 he graduated from high school in Hillside, New Jersey. His graduation yearbook stated that Cottingham was a member of the school's cross-country and track team. After graduation, Cottingham worked for Metropolitan Life, where his father was a vice president, starting in the mailroom at the firm's Manhattan headquarters, and eventually became a mainframe computer operator upon taking computer courses. In October 1966, he became a computer operator for the Blue Cross Blue Shield Association, where he worked until his 1980, spoiler alert, he got arrested. I think that's, part of the course, because we're not talking about the higher people of society won't be in this playlist. At Blue Cross, guess who he worked with? He worked in an office with Rodney Alcala. He was a child molester and a serial killer under the alias of John Berger. Again, he's on my list, so he's going to be talked about very soon. Neither man claimed to have been aware of the other, nor is there any evidence they were familiar with each other prior to their respective arrests. Yeah, because he was another nice dude, not. On the 3rd of May 1970, Cottingham was married at Our Lady of Lourdes Church in Queens Village in Queens. He had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, with his wife. In April 1978, she filed for divorce on the grounds of, quote, abandonment and mental cruelty, end quote, refusing to have sex with her after the birth of their 3rd child, staying out until the early morning and leaving her insufficient household funds. That was the divorce reasons. His wife withdrew the petition upon his arrest in May 1980, then completed the divorce after his 1981 conviction. Cottingham was arrested on several lesser charges throughout his killing spree. Police were not aware of his murders at that time, nor were they aware that a serial killer was active in the tri-state area. On the 3rd of October 1969, Cottingham was charged and convicted of drunk driving in New York City, and he was fined $50. On August the 21st, 1972, he was charged and convicted of shoplifting at a Stearns department store and was sentenced to pay a $50 fine or 10 days in jail. On September the 4th, 1973, he was arrested in New York City for robbery, oral sodomy and sexual abuse on the complainant of a sex worker and her pimp. Neither complaint appeared in further proceedings, however, and the case was dismissed. And let me guess, without you having to tell me, it's because of not the job of choice, that's the wrong word, but because of what she did for a living. It was like, sadly they are viewed lesser than these people, and it is not fair, and it's actually quite distressing. On March the 12th, 1974, Cottingham was arrested in New York City for robbery again and lawful imprisonment on the complaint of another sex worker. Once again, the victim did not appear in further proceedings and the case was dismissed. So here we have a guy who is already showing signs of abuse towards women and dismissed, $50 fine. It's going to get into his head, right? It's going to be like, well, I can get away with anything now. Yeah, because you're asking me all these questions and little do you know that I'm actually murdering people, but you're asking me about a robbery. Okay. Final arrest and charges. In the early morning hours of May 22nd, 1980, Cottingham picked up an 18-year-old sex worker, Leslie Ann Odell, who was soliciting on the corner of Lexington Avenue and 25th Street in Manhattan. They checked into an inn at room 117. Cottingham offered to give Leslie Ann a massage, and she rolled onto her stomach. Straddling her back, he drew a knife and he put it in her throat as he snapped a pair of handcuffs on her wrists. He began torturing her, nearly biting off one of her nipples. She later testified, oh my gosh, she survived this. She later testified that he said, quote, "You have to take it. The other girls did. You have to take it too. You're a whore and you have to be punished." End quote. At one point, Leslie reached under the bed for a fake gun that Cottingham had threatened her with, thinking it was a real one, and attempted to shoot him with it. When it did not fire, Cottingham came at her with a knife. She screamed, "Oh God, no." The screams brought the motel employees to the room, and they summoned the police. Cottingham was arrested in the hallway at gunpoint. When arrested, he had handcuffs, a leather gag, 2 slave collars, a switchblade knife, replica pistols, and a stockpile of prescription pills. The charges listed in Cottingham's New Jersey indictment included kidnapping, attempted murder, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, aggravated sexual assault while armed, rape, aggravated sexual assault while armed, sodomy. aggravated sexual assault while armed, possession of a weapon, the switchblade knife, and possession of controlled substances. It does list them, but I don't know what they are. I know diazepam is like a sleeping thing, I think. In April 1978, after his wife had initiated divorce proceedings, he kept a locked room in a basement apartment of the house in which they lived in New Jersey. Following his 1980 arrest, police found in the locked room and in the trunk of his car personal effects which they traced to several of his victims. Now, side note and question. If I was a serial killer, which I is not, but if I was, and I go around and I commit 5 crimes, because that would make me a serial killer, I'm not sure what taking a necklace or a shoe, they always take trophies, and I never understand this because it links them back to the person. I don't understand this trophy idea. I've never really understood that. But with that said, they do have an entitled sense, and they think they're never going to get caught. And especially when he's being questioned about a robbery, and they go, "Oh, you naughty boy, give us $50." And he's like, "Okay, I'll pay that, and I'm off because I've been murdering people and you're not asking me about that." It's gonna obviously get into his mind that he's gonna get away with it. And had this poor lady not screamed at the hotel or the inn where they were, who knows? Okay, back to this horrific individual. During his 1981 trial, 3 additional surviving abduction rape victims testified along with Leslie against Cottingham in court, claiming that they had also been sexually abused and tortured by him. 2 of the victims, Susan and Karen, identified Cottingham in a police lineup. He was ultimately convicted in 3 of the cases and acquitted in 1. 22-year-old pregnant waitress Karen Schilt met Cottingham at 9 p.m. on March the 22nd in 1978. Karen had exited a 3rd Avenue bar and made her way back to her apartment when she was picked up by Cottingham and driven down Route 80 in New Jersey. After being forced to ingest sleeping pills, near the Ledgewood Terrace apartments in a parking lot, a patrolman had discovered her motionless body the following morning. She had been sexually assaulted, who then abandoned her in a sewer with everything exposed, lady parts all exposed. 19-year-old sex worker Susan Grieger was approached and propositioned by Cottingham on the night of October the 10th in 1978 in Manhattan between Broadway and 7th Avenue on West 47th Street. Although Susan informed Cottingham that she had reservations for the remainder of the evening, she left him her contact information at the Alpine Hotel. The subsequent evening, and this is again the next evening, he's had time to go, this isn't a good idea. But no, he's actually thinking, oh, can't wait. He called her and asked her out on a date at midnight. He picked Susan up in his vehicle before plying Susan with a number of drugged drinks. Susan would later awaken covered in her own blood in room 28 of the airport motel. Susan had been tortured and he injured her face and lady parts and everything. In addition, he had beaten Susan multiple times with a garden hose and tore her gold earrings out of her ears. On May 12th, 1980, 19-year-old sex worker Pamela Weisenfield was found beaten up in a parking lot in Teaneck, New Jersey. According to police and medical reports, Pamela's attacker bit her multiple times. After meeting Cottingham, Pamela had been drugged and brutally beaten, suffering several injuries all over her body. After being found, the police took her to a hospital. That's the one he was acquitted of. It's got the hallmarks of what he does, and he was acquitted of this one. Cottingham claims to have started killing as an adolescent, and he has claimed to have killed as many as 100. Cottingham often sought female sex workers in their late teens to mid-20s and is believed to have killed people in Florida, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey and Baltimore. He would approach his victims in bars, drug them, take them to a remote location and would bind, gag, torture and stab them before killing them by strangulation or asphyxiation. Trophies like jewellery and other personal items belonging to his victims were taken by him. Why? This I don't understand the trophy thing. Over the course of two separate New Jersey trials in 1981 and 1982, Cottingham was convicted in 3 non-fatal assaults and the murders of 2 women which occurred in New Jersey. Okay, so at approximately 7 a.m. on the morning of December the 16th, 1977, the body of X-ray technologist Marianne Carr, 26, was found between a parked van and a chain link fence in Little Ferry, New Jersey. She was still wearing her white nurse's uniform, but her shoes were missing. Marianne was last seen on December the 15th in the parking lot of the Ledgewood Terrace apartments, which Cottingham and his wife had previously resided in. Cottingham kidnapped her from the apartment complex and took her to the Quality Inn in New Jersey. Once inside, he beat, bit, slashed and raped her. She had been restrained, then strangled with a ligature. That, just in case you don't know, he didn't use his hands, he used rope or something. That's what a ligature is. I told you I'm in a deep dark hole. After Cottingham dumped her in the parking lot of the Quality Inn, not far from the apartments where they lived, Marianne exhibited handcuff-related bruises on her wrists, ankles, as well as remnants of adhesive tape on her mouth. Cottingham was convicted of her murder on October the 12th, 1982. On May 5th, 1980, the body of Valerie Ann Street, 19, a sex worker, was found by a motel worker at the same Quality Inn where Cottingham had dumped Mary Ann's body. Using an alias, Valerie checked into room 132 with Cottingham, who stuffed her body under the bed for housekeeping to find. Investigators discovered Valerie handcuffed and with 2 ligature marks on her throat. They also determined that she had been gagged with white adhesive tape. Valerie had bite marks in addition to being bitten all over her body and head. She had also had numerous minor knife incisions on her breasts. One fingerprint belonging to Cottingham was recovered from the ratchet mechanism of the handcuffs left behind on Valerie. He was convicted of her murder on June the 12th, 1981. In a single 1984 trial, Cottingham was convicted in the deaths of 3 additional women which occurred in New York City between 1979 and 1980. He was arrested for their murders on July the 9th, 1984. Staff at the Travel Lodge Motor Inn in New York City made a call to the nearby fire department on December the 2nd, 1979, at around 9 a.m. The call was made as a result of the personnel discovering significant smoke inside room 417. A "Do Not Disturb" sign was hanging from the door. 2 naked female bodies were discovered by the firefighters on 2 different beds. Prior to the deaths, the women were brutalized and their murderer burned their bodies. Both women's hands had been severed. The killer had also beheaded them. The missing body parts were never found. A later autopsy revealed that both women had been tortured, sexually assaulted while still alive for several days. Dida Gudzari, 22, she's from Kuwait, an immigrant who worked as a sex worker, was identified shortly afterwards. The other victim remains unidentified and is estimated to be between 16 and 42. She is referred to as Manhattan Jane Doe. In 2009, in an interview, Cottingham admitted to the murders and claimed that he severed the heads and the hands of the victims to prevent their identification, as he was acquainted with Dida and he had been seen with her in a bar the night before. Mary Ann Jean Rayner, 25, was discovered on May the 15th, 1980 at the Seville Hotel in New York City. Investigators discovered that Mary's attacker had cut her throat, removed both her breasts. The murderer had left the breasts on the headboard of the bed. This takes a serious warped mind. Mary's body had also been set on fire as part of the perpetrator's attempt to get rid of evidence. After his initial convictions, because this isn't bad enough, right? Cottingham pleaded his innocence, and for decades he insisted that he had been framed, until admitting in 2009 that he actually perpetrated the 5 homicides. In 2000, a detective in the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, I'm just going to call him Robert because I don't think I can pronounce his surname, Anzalotti, was tasked with reviewing a series of cold cases from the 1960s and 1970s. Robert believed that Cottingham, quote, between his history and the suspicions of detectives that came before me, end quote, could be responsible for one or more of those crimes, so he began to interview Cottingham from 2003. In 2010, Cottingham pleaded guilty to a 1967 murder. Then, in exchange for immunity from prosecution starting in 2014, Cottingham confessed to murdering 3 teenage females between 1968 and 1969. The prosecution office from earlier exceptionally closed the 3 cold case murders with agreement from the victims' families and evidence corroborating the confessions, but for several years kept this secret from the public to keep Cottingham talking about other cases. In December 2019, forensic historian and author Peter Vronsky, on the eve of publishing the revelation in his 2nd edition of Serial Killers, The Method and the Madness of Monsters, publicised the confessions, and with the prosecution's office cooperation, Anzalotti and the office subsequently confirmed the exceptional closures of the 3 murders. In April 2021, Cottingham confessed to an unsolved 1974 double homicide in Montvale, one of New Jersey's most notorious cold cases. The confession was extracted by Anzalotti weeks before his retirement and was fascinated by Vronsky and Jennifer Wise, the daughter of Didar, one of his victims. They had been meeting with Cottingham in prison since the spring of 2017, counselling him to make the confessions. In March 2023, Anzalotti elicited another confession from Cottingham, the murder of a 17-year-old who vanished in January 1967. Marianne Della Sala, 17, disappeared at the end of her shift at 9 p.m. on January 24, 1967, from a ShopRite store at 330 Essex Street in New Jersey. Her body was found 3 months later on April the 20th in the river. She had been strangled. Police concluded that she was killed elsewhere and then thrown into the river. There was no sign of sexual assault. Did he own that? Because that, mind you, this is 67. Is this before he escalated? Because it doesn't sound like a Cottingham one. She wasn't assaulted and, beaten and bitten. And Nancy, known as Bobby Vogel, 29, a married mother of two, was found dead in her automobile, bound and naked, in Ridgefield Park, New Jersey, on October the 30th in 1967. She had last been seen 3 days earlier in Little Ferry, when she left home to play bingo with friends at a local church. Instead, she chose to do her shopping in a mall in Bergen County. Cottingham met Vogel at the shopping centre and kidnapped her. He took her to a field in Montvale and strangled her there. Vogel and Cottingham were acquaintances, and he was convicted of her murder on August the 25th, 2010. Jacqueline Leah Harp, known as Jackie, 13, vanished on July 17th, 1968 in Midland Park, New Jersey, after she failed to come home from band rehearsal at her school. The next morning, on July 18th, her body was discovered at Goffle Brook. She had been beaten about the face and had been strangled with a leather strap from her flag sling. Police believe the attack was sexually motivated, despite the fact that she had not been raped, since her clothes were in disarray. Cottingham claimed that he attempted to persuade Jackie to get into his car, but she resisted. He then drove his car in front of her, stopped, and walked over to her. Cottingham caught up to Jackie despite her attempts to flee, dragged her into a cluster of bushes, and killed her. Irene Blaze, 18, was reported missing on April the 7th, 1969. On April the 8th, she was discovered face down in 4 feet of water in Saddle River, New Jersey, strangled with a chain from a crucifix she was wearing. Cottingham confessed that he saw Irene shopping in Hackensack, New Jersey, and convinced her to join him for a drink. Taking a cab to another location, Cottingham and Irene spent some time together, after which Cottingham offered to bring Irene back to the bus station. He then drove Irene to a remote location against her will before raping and killing her. On July the 13th, 1969, at approximately 8 p.m, Denise Falaska, 15, left her residence on Bergeline Avenue in Gloucester, New Jersey, on her way to meet friends in Westwood. At 11 p.m, Denise was scheduled to be back home, but she never arrived. At around 9 p.m, witnesses claimed to have seen Denise heading along Old Hook Road in Emerson in the direction of Westwood. Denise's body was found on the side of Westminster Place in Saddlebrook, New Jersey, on July the 14th. Denise, according to Cottingham, was walking down the side of the road in Emerson when he pulled up next to her and offered her a ride. Shortly after, he drove to the parking lot of his former school, where he forced Denise to perform oral sex on him. Dissatisfied with her inexperience, he murdered her. On August the 9th, 1974, Lorraine Marie Kelly, 16, and Mary Ann Pryor, 17, left North Bergen with plans to go shopping at the Garden State Plaza. Kelly's boyfriend left the two off at the bus stop on Broad Street in Ridgefield. They intended to hitchhike from there. Their bodies were found on August the 14th in a wooded location close to the Ridgemont Gardens complex. They were naked and bound to one another at the wrists and ankles while laying face down next to each other. Both had been beaten and raped. The ligature marks on their necks suggested that they had likely been strangled as well. Both also had cigarette burns. Cottingham was convicted of both their murders on April the 27th, 2021. In court, Cottingham admitted to kidnapping the girls, then tying them up and raping them, both in a motel room. He killed them by drowning them in the bathtub. On August the 26th, 2022, with a non-prosecution agreement, officials in Rockland County, New York, corroborated and accepted Cottingham's confessions to the 1970 murder of 26-year-old Lorraine McCraw. Cottingham's additional confession to a 1974 murder was discounted by Rockland County Police. In June 2022, Cottingham was arraigned from his prison hospital bed for the 1968 murder of Diane Cusick. Authorities believed it to be, thus far, the oldest criminal case to be solved and prosecuted by direct DNA evidence. He pleaded guilty in a court appearance on December the 5th and also officially admitted killing 4 other women during 1972 and 73 in Long Island, New York: Mary Beth Hines, Laverne Moy, Sheila Hyman, and Maria Neves. Diane Martin Cusick, 23, a Long Island dance teacher, was found dead on February the 16th in 1968 in the backseat of her car. In 1961, a Plymouth Villian outside the Green Acres Mall in Valley Stream, New York, with adhesive tape around her mouth and neck. She had been beaten, raped and strangled. Her hands had defense wounds. DNA from semen recovered at the crime scene was extracted and it matched a sample retrieved from Cottingham. Near the Green Acres Mall, there was a drive-in theatre that Cottingham frequently visited. Authorities believe that Cottingham approached Diane while pretending to be a mall security guard. On March the 1st, 1970, a group of hikers came across a young woman's naked body in the woods to the west of Tweed Boulevard in New York. The victim had marks around her neck indicating that she had been strangled. The FBI identified the deceased as Lorraine McCraw, 26, who lived in Long Island and had been missing since February the 27th, 1970. Lorraine had a history of drug and prostitution offences. Many of them were listed under false names. Lorraine worked in a number of adult establishments. On August the 26th, 2022, Cottingham confessed to killing her. The body of Mary Beth Hines, 21, was discovered on May the 10th, 1972, near a creek in Rockville Centre, New York. She had cuts on her face and neck from being strangled. Mary, who experienced seizures and had been diagnosed with epilepsy, vanished on May the 5th as she boarded a bus to travel to a nearby dance. He claimed to have thrown her body from Rockville Centre's Peninsula Boulevard Bridge. Laverne Moy, 23, of St Albans, Queens, was discovered in Rockville Centre Creek on July 20th, 1972. She had been killed by strangulation. Cottingham claimed that he had thrown her body off the same bridge where he had previously dumped Mary's. Sheila Hyman, 33, was found bludgeoned and stabbed to death in her home in North Woodmere, New York, on July 20th, 1973, when her husband returned after a trip to a department store that morning. He discovered her deceased in the master bathroom. None of the rooms outside the bathroom showed evidence of a struggle, and none of the neighbours reported seeing anything strange around her time of death. 18-year-old Marita Neves, a native of Puerto Rico, was found dead in Wantagh, New York, on December 27th, 1973. She was found strangled to death in a weeded area close to a bus stop on Ocean Parkway. She was discovered by park maintenance personnel wrapped in a grey blanket and covered in plastic bags. On October the 7th, 1974, 15-year-old Lisa Thomas left her home and walked to Nanuet Mall at 3:30 p.m, intending to buy a blouse, about 700 feet from their New York home. Lisa's body was found by her father the following morning in the woods behind the mall. Lisa was blindfolded with a crimson rag that she had in her purse, and her head had been bashed in. Lisa had not been sexually assaulted. On August 26, 2022, Cottingham admitted to killing both her and Lorraine. Despite his confession, the investigation into her death is still ongoing, and he was not charged with the crime. This is because authorities did not agree with or take his statements regarding Lisa seriously. Now, I have questions. There's a couple of cases in there that don't kind of go with his MO. And I'd have to go back through the timeline of when he was escalating, but a couple of them are questionable, and it brings back, I believe it was Henry Lee Lucas, and he was being given McDonald's and milkshakes and burgers and, fairy cakes and whatnot in exchange for confessions. I kind of get the same vibe here. He's like, oh yeah, I did it, because he's just going for notoriety at this point. So, yeah, he might well have. I can't say that he didn't, but it just has that same kind of vibe to that. In my personal opinion, I am no true crime expert. I just, chat about it a lot and watch it a lot. But yeah, he's a very depraved individual. I do believe, let me just double check my facts, but I do believe he is still breathing air. and he's like obviously still incarcerated. Where is he? He was apprehended. It normally tells you where he is. He was nicknamed the New York Ripper, the Torso Killer, and the Times Square Killer, since he was convicted of 3 murders that occurred there that included mutilation. He's 77, so he is still breathing air. I don't think he should be. His wife divorced him in 1981. He has 3 children. Victims 18 to 19 plus. Span of crimes 1967 to 1980. He is one of the most prolific cases. Cottingham's confirmed killings resulted in 9 convictions and a further 8 confessions under non-prosecution agreements, leading to him serving multiple life sentences in New Jersey prisons. In 2009, decades after his first 5 murder convictions, Cottingham told a journalist he had committed at least 80, quote, perfect murders of women in various regions of the United States. Again, I'm not buying the 100 or the 80, but that's what he's going for. And by just confessing to, if they fit the age range and they're female and so on and so forth, some were not sexually assaulted, but we know he was a sexual sadist. We know this. So, maybe he got disturbed, maybe he didn't have time. That could well have happened, but I'm just not buying. There's some question marks for me personally, but that does not distract. This does not take away from the absolutely horrific nature that this human has done. He must have terrified women of that time period in all of those areas, various states all over the US. And again, my heart truly goes out to the victims and to their families, and the ones that I talked about that may or may not have been in his murder count. It's just absolutely tragic. Such young women and brutally taken. My heart truly goes out to them and their families. Oh, I'm sorry, I took a second there. Oh, wow, another heavy episode. Yeah, and a lengthy one. I'm just, wow. He was linked to Jeanette De Palma, and I'm not quite sure how. In the episode, I will see how he was linked to her, but he was suspected. I'm not so sure. Going on his MO, I can see why the police would like to make it fit, but I don't know, there's differences, quite a lot of differences actually, so I don't know. I'm no expert by any means, but yeah, there you go. Thank you for joining me. That was a heavy one. Yeah, as always, please do leave your thoughts and comments down below, and yeah, any questions that I've asked throughout this episode, and feel free to answer them in the comments section. Yeah, guys, we keep coming back Sunday after Sunday and finding more and more depraved individuals to talk about. But yeah, this is very, 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 very sad. for all of the victims. I did kind of look for a montage of the victims, but I can't do it justice because I don't know who's who, and there isn't like a montage including everyone. It's kind of broken down into states, and I didn't want to do it on justice, but there you go. I very much appreciate you joining me for these true crimes, and yeah, I will see you next week to talk about another depraved individual. Again, if you have any suggestions on who you want me to look up, please do contact me or leave them down in the comment section. Comment section would probably be best, but yeah. Wow. There we go. Please stay safe out there, and I will see you next week for another true crime. This individual is one horrific. He's up there with the most prolific, isn't he? For sure. He is one of the worst cases that I have covered in quite a while. I don't know. We seem to be finding more and more depraved, psychotic kind of killers. But yeah, he's definitely one of the most prolific. See you next week, guys, and thank you for joining me. Bye.